All right, I think this is our 7th week as we go through the Bible in a year. It's like we're not going to make it at this pace, but we're going to try to pick up a few books here as time goes on. We left off on page 34, chapter 9 of the book of Numbers, I think. We're going to pick it up here in chapter 10. One quick go back. I think Len asked a question about the Nazirite vow, and it was interesting as I went to study more about it. I didn't really learn any more. Nazirite vow, he thought it was something that was maybe particular to the priest. It's not. Anyone can take a Nazirite vow, and it's basically a time of complete devotion to God. Fill in the blanks. I could find no illustrations apart from Samuel and Samson in the Old Testament. And we see this, and I mentioned this last time, we see Paul in the New Testament completing his vows. He's going to pay for some other people to complete their vows. Went to some of my Jewish sites. It's kind of funny. The Jewish site said if you invoke a Nazirite vow now, you have to wait until the temple is rebuilt before that Nazirite vow can be completed. So basically you're stuck into the eternal Nazirite vow because of the final thing you do is you go to the temple, you make an offering, and there's no temple. So they kind of stick to it. That's a very conservative Jewish sect I kind of refer to from time to time. But I guess you could think of it maybe as a Christian. There's times when we might want to go above and beyond. This is the purity laws. They take to the nth value. You don't even touch grapes or strong drink. And you're totally devoted to God. And I can see that maybe it's like a time you're praying about something. You're seeking His will. In a matter, typically they would last for a month. That was kind of the nominal period. It could be longer, it could be lesser if you did that. But it was basically not something to draw attention to yourself, but really that total devotion to God. You go out of your way to be devoted to God, and your normal routines would be upset. That's about all I really got out of it. Many reference sources, but that was discussed in I think chapter 9 was it? Nope, it was up in chapter 6. Just wanted a little go back on that. Okay, so chapter 10, I like this. God is a God of order, and let me read what He's got for us here. So the Lord commands Moses to make 2 trumpets for calling the assembly. There's details given that. And then the pillar of cloud will give guidance during the day for the eye, while the trumpets gave guidance for the ear. He wants us to look at 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18. 1 Thessalonians 4, I'm just about there, 13 through 18. And it says, But I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with Him. For this we say unto you, by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord shall not prevent, that is, go before them which are asleep. For the Lord Himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. And then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the cloud to meet with the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. Aside from it being a trumpet, I really don't know what the tie-in is there. But we do see that God does direct His people with the trumpet and with 600,000 fighting men, as we've looked at, and they're spread out. And if you read the instructions, if they blow one trumpet, all the leaders are supposed to show up. If they blow 2 trumpets, everybody shows up. And if they've had other signs, if they're being attacked, they know which cardinal direction to swing over to defend the camp. It's kind of, God is a God of order, and even before they start marching, these things are in place. I just kind of like that thought here. So we will see in Numbers chapter 10, verse 11, we get this little time mark, and it says, It came to pass on the 20th day of the 2nd month, in the 2nd year, that the cloud was taken up from off the tabernacle, the testimony. And the children of Israel took their journeys out of the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud rested in the wilderness of Paran. So cloud's up, starts moving, follow cloud. And so they all pack up the tabernacle, and off they go. So this is going to continue from here through chapter 14. Again, a map would be good. I don't have one with me. I've printed out some as we go through it, but we're in Sinai. We're in I believe, the southern tip of Sinai. There's different theories and philosophies on this, but the conservative one is southern Sinai. They head north. They're going to start marching north and following the pillar of cloud. They're going to have the trumpets that will sound, and the whole camp heads on out. So chapters 11 through 14, we'll find the people moving towards the promised land. Again, that's the goal here. And after 3 days, they begin to murmur and complain. And even Aaron and Miriam will become jealous of their brother Moses. This is where we talk about leprosy. Basically, they're going to say, well, we're of the same family too. We ought to have a piece of this pie. And God knocks him down. He does not give Aaron, for because he was the high priest, God spares Aaron from becoming leprous. But Miriam will be given leprosy, and they'll have to stop and put her outside of the camp for several days. One of their specific complaint was, though, Moses' wife had died, just a little side note, and he had taken an Ethiopian as a wife, but the bottom line, it looks like that they wanted power like Moses had power. Well, they didn't realize that God had called Moses. It's not something that Moses put himself in the place of. So yes, Miriam will get a lesson in the laws of leprosy, and they will wait. She'll be outside of the camp for 7 days, and then she will be clean, and they will be able to march on. Let's see, what else do they have? But they begin to murmur. It even starts right here in chapter 11, and when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. Because what are they saying? The people cried unto Moses. What are they complaining about? Well, they want food. They want what they had in Egypt. And in verse 4 of chapter 11, they fell a-lusting, and they wept, and oh, who will give us flesh to eat? Oh, remember the fish, those wonderful fish in the Nile we did eat, freely, and cucumbers and melons and leeks and onions and garlic. And they're complaining about what God's giving them, which is manna. And so this begins a bad trail for them that's going to end at Kadesh Barnea. I'm not going to go any deeper than he does, but you'll see this. So they will then march up to Kadesh, and they will send out 12 spies into the land. We will be in chapter 13 at this point. We're just kind of thumbing along. They'll pick a leader from each of the 12 tribes. They will go up in the land. They'll spy it out for 40 days. And when they come back, they're carrying the fruit of the land. They're carrying dates and grapes, and they have a great report that's flowing with milk and honey, but 10 of them say, but there's giants in the land. And only 2 will stand up against the 12, and Joshua and Caleb. And basically they say, as he says there, well, let us go up and possess the land. They would not. And so judgment will fall. Basically 1 year for in the wilderness for each day that they were spying out the land. They'll get 40 years worth of wandering, and in that time, the people that were basically complaining that God couldn't take care of them, and their little ones in particular, they will all die. They will die in the wilderness. He says, take us to Numbers 14, 29 through 33. This will be God's condemnation. Your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and all that were numbered of you according to your whole number from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me, doubtless ye shall not come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, which he said should be a prey, them will I bring in, and they shall know the land which ye have despised. 2 more verses. But as for you, your carcasses, they shall fall in this wilderness, and your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, and bear your whoredoms until your carcasses be wasted in the wilderness. That process of wasting will begin at the end of the chapter. They will go up and they will try to fight their way into the land, and they will be discomfited. The Amalekites and the Canaanites will rout them. And so they will just start their marching.
So can I ask a question? In that verse it says, which you said about the children. Oh, shoot, I just had it.
33?
No, and your little ones, which ye said should be a prey. Did they offer up their children for a sacrifice or something?
No. Basically, they're complaining to God. What they're saying is, you brought us all the way out here. I'm going to speak as an Israelite. You brought us all the way out here to kill us and our little children. We brought our children out here, and they're going to die because you brought us out here. And they're using the children as emotional leverage against God.
Oh.
And God says, you're worried about your little ones, and that's really what he says. He's answering them head on, right on the nose. You're worried about your little ones, guess what? They're going to enjoy the land. You're not. You're going to be dead. And so that's really the flow there. And sadly, this is a case where the children had to suffer through the parents' mistakes, that they will have to wander for 40 years before they get to enjoy that rest. Well, the children become adults in that point in time. But God will provide for them, though, through that whole process. So only Joshua and Caleb will be allowed to go in. So the wilderness wandering, so we pick up in chapter 15, and in just chapter 15 through 20, this is where it all happens, basically, the end of chapter 14 and then picking up here. So this is a transition from the old to the new generation, again with the exception of Joshua and Caleb, number 7, page 35. So the Lord told the people they would die. We saw that in Numbers 14:29, and that their children would go into the land. And for all those years they wandered and finally came to the same spot where they had been in Kadesh Barnea. God continued to communicate with them through Moses during this time. We'll see examples of that. Numbers 15:1, the Lord spake unto Moses. We see this again and again through the book of Numbers about God speaking to Moses. Numbers 15:1, and then verse 17, the same thing. And the Lord spake unto Moses, verse 35, and the Lord spake unto Moses. So he's getting direction. God, in the meantime, is providing them with food, with water. Their clothes and shoes, as I recall, they did not wear out. Deuteronomy 8:2-6 is a good little summary, I think, because in Deuteronomy 2, it kind of gives a little summary of life on the roads as they're basically at the gate to go in across from Jericho. So let's see what Deuteronomy 2.
Yeah, verse 4.
It should be 8:2-6.
8, yeah.
Anyone there?
And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee, and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee, and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. Thy raiment waxed not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell these 40 years. Thou shalt also consider in thine heart, that as a man chasteneth his son, so the Lord thy God chasteneth thee. Therefore thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, and to fear him. For the Lord thy God bringeth thee unto a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and deep depths that spring out of the valleys and hills. How far are we going?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, extra verse there, which is good.
Oh.
Again, Deuteronomy, we're not quite there yet, but it's going to be a reminder of how they've gotten where they were. But basically, the Deuteronomy's second law, they'll be hearing the law a second time as they prepare to go into the land as a reminder. And the real key point is the 600,000 fighting men that started the journey are now gone. And so he's instructing the new generation that's going to go into the land, be mindful and don't forget what happened. 600,000 illustrations in disobedience to God fell. All right. So there we are over there. So for all those years they wandered, they came to that same spot. We did that. Okay, chapter 16-18 comes an attack on the Aaronic priesthood. Over 15,000 die in an earthquake, fire, and plague. It'll be the Korah rebellion. And basically, again, not noting God's leadership, but taking it upon themselves. Korah, he was a Levite, but not of the tribe of Aaron. And they basically say, hey, we want to, you guys think you're hot stuff, we want to rule as well, we want to have the high priest jobs. It was a direct rebellion against the leadership, really, that God had set up. And so this is where they will take the rods. Each of you guys bring a rod. We're gonna lay them out here overnight. Aaron will put one, we'll carve your name on it, and we'll see which one buds in the morning. And sure enough, they come out, and Aaron's rod will be budding. It will be the one, God's sign that it's indeed Aaron that was to be their leader. And then what's the second thing? They also have they'll bring their little censers and bring an offering, and God will destroy all these other men except for Aaron and his. Aaron will not be destroyed in that. So he'll basically in this rebellion, 16,000 as they have there, over 15,000 will die in the plague. Again, God causes a rod of Aaron to blossom, showing his personal approval of the office God had set that. And the budding of the rod speaks of Christ, our high priest, and of his resurrection. Hebrews 4:14, 5:4 through 10. Let's probably worth reading that. Galatians, keep going.
Hebrews 4:14.
Yeah.
Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession.
Okay.
And
And
then
then 5:4 through 10. And no man taketh this honor unto himself, but he that is called of God, as was Aaron. So also Christ glorified not himself to be made a high priest, but he that said unto him, Thou art my son, today have I begotten thee. And as he saith also in another place, Thou art a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek. We keep going till 10, doesn't he? Who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications, with strong crying and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, and was heard in that he feared, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered, and being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him, called of God, a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Okay. So I think that the general thing is in the calling of the priesthood, the budding rod showed that Aaron was God's man, and Christ's ministry shows that he was God's man. All right. So chapter 10, it seems to me or chapter 20. I don't want to skip over. This is my pulpit Bible, so it's not all marked up. Okay, we'll hit chapter 21. We can't pass that. Okay, so chapter 20. Miriam dies. There's not really any reason why she dies. She just dies. And the sin of Moses, when he smote the rock twice. If you know you guys, I think you probably read it. The first time God says, strike the rock, and he does, and water comes out. Well, the second time, God's going to say, just speak to the rock. You don't have to smite the rock. But Moses becomes so frustrated by the nation and their ill behavior and their disbelief that he smites the rock. And it'll be that basically he sinned against God. God was going to get the glory by simply speaking to the rock, and that the rock would burst forth water. And that disobedience will be what an object lesson that Moses will not be able to go into the promised land because of that. Both he and Aaron will not be able to go into the promised land because of that, and Aaron was part of that. And you have a great ministry, and Moses certainly had a great ministry, but it just takes one mess up, and that maybe that goal that you're reaching for will never be achieved, but it's all for God in the bottom line. But anyways, that will be his sin. You'll see that there. Chapter 20 of Numbers, verse 12, we get the condemnation. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believe me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. given that disappointment, I want to say this about Moses, because elsewhere in the Bible it says Moses was the meekest man that ever lived. Before Moses dies, he petitions God, is who should take over. He wants to make sure that the job gets done. Even though he's not going to get to do it, some people could say, well, that's somebody else's problem. He wanted to make sure that there was a chain of command. And you'll see as we go through Numbers and into Deuteronomy that God, Moses will be allowed to see that Joshua is going to be the next one that's going to lead the nation into the promised land. So even on that disappointment, Moses is still God's man. So Aaron will die. He'll be buried in verse 24 of chapter 20. And Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given unto the children of Israel, because he rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. And he'll be buried. In the morning, he says, for 30 days, and even all the house of Israel, then they will continue marching. Chapters 21 through 36, we'll see basically the final passing of the old guard, and the new generation will take over, and we'll be going from Kadesh Barnea around to Moab. We're kind of doing a south and then north move to be prepared to go into Jericho. We're not going to go in from the south. I guess that was too fortified, or God's not going to let them do that. He's going to bring them around. And to be across from Jericho, that means going through the land of Moab. And what does he have for us here? And basically the last of the old ones die, so the new journeying, chapter 21 through 25, the journey was made longer again because Edom will refuse to let them go through their land. Numbers 20:14, these things will be important in the future. Numbers 20:14 says, and Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom, thus saith thy brother Israel, thou knowest all the travail that hath befallen us. And he's going to, do I have to read the whole thing here? Yes, through 22. Basically, he's going to petition to go through the land. I'm going to paraphrase just for sake of time. He's going to petition to go through the land of Edom. And verse 18, and Edom said unto him, thou shalt not pass by me, lest I come out against thee with the sword. So the children of Israel said unto him, we shall go by the highway, and if my cattle drink of the water, then I will pay for it. Basically he says, nope, you're not going to do it at all. Verse 20, and so they refused to give Israel passage, and they will have to go a longer way around, but they will get there. 21 verse 4, and they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom, and the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. But they kept on going, keep on keeping on. But more murmuring, and once this murmuring starts, we get this kind of curious case of fiery serpents going through the camp. And again, there's they should have been learning, but they did learn. Numbers 21:8, the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fire. Okay, where is it? The people spake against God. Verse 5 of chapter 21. We get my thoughts together here. Yep, chapter 21, verse 5. And the people spake against God and against Moses. Wherefore have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loatheth this light bread, meaning the manna. By the way, manna, does anyone know what that means?
I've heard it just means stuff or something like that.
Well, it basically means, what is it?
Yeah.
Ma means what, na, that. What is it?
Yeah.
Is basically what it means in Hebrew. Kind of a great name, I think. What is it? Can I have some more of the what is it? Sure. But so they loathed it though. The Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. And the answer is what? You put a bronze serpent on a stick, a nesh, a pole, and you held it up. And people, how do they get healed from the fiery serpents? When they're bit, what's he say? Look at the serpent on this pole. Do what I'm now start believing me. Do what I'm telling you to do. You get bitten, you look up there. And those that looked lived. Those that didn't look didn't live. Does that sound familiar? Let's go to John chapter 3. This is one of those, as you're reading, even if you haven't read this before, this is one of those aha moments. John chapter 3. And we will be in verse 14. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Why? That whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. And the parallel is made there. This is a type of Christ. This is something if you were talking about typology earlier on, this is a rock solid type of Christ, because the New Testament points back to it. And it almost seems too easy, right? All you had to do to be healed from the fiery serpents is to actually listen to what God has to say for a change, which makes sense. And what is the message of the gospel?
Faith.
Look and live. Believe in him. And so the way to be saved is God. Again, God provides that way, and we just read John 3:14 and 15. See 1 Corinthians 10, 9 and 10. Someone gets there before me, please. I'm into Romans.
1 Corinthians what, 9 and 10?
1 Corinthians
10.
10.
9 and 10.
Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed of serpents. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyer.
And then in verse 11 to, I think just 9 and 10, that's it. So, obviously that was a powerful lesson, but the lesson again being, it's better to be mute than murmur at times, and to seek God's will rather than complain to God. So that's 1 Corinthians 10, 9 and 10. We'll have this interesting confrontation with this prophet, a false prophet, by the name of Balaam, chapter 22 through 25. It takes up a lot of real estate. Basically, as Israel is marching through the land, the kings are freaking out. Moab will try to hire Balaam to curse. If has anyone read this? Maybe I haven't read that. The brief summary is Balaam was a prophet in the land, and what they try to do is hire him to curse Israel. He will not curse Israel. Every time he opens his mouth, God puts something in it, and it was a blessing. And they actually set him on several hills to curse Israel, and he could never curse Israel. This is, yes, the talking donkey, as the Balaam's heading up to do this and receive a lot of money to do it for the king of Moab. The donkey sees an angel waiting with a sword, waiting to separate Balaam's head from the rest of Balaam, and runs him into a wall, and the donkey starts to talk to him as he's getting beaten. But the angel does not kill him, but Balaam learns that he'll say only what God has to say. But what happens in 2 Peter 2:15? Anyone back there?
Which have forsaken the right way, and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness.
And Jude 11, we'll come back to the heir of Balaam. Jude 11.
Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah.
Okay, gainsaying of Korah. In Revelation 2:14, we'll pull all these together after we read them all.
(2:14).
2:14.
Yes. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication.
So, with Balaam tries to curse, we'll do the condensed version here. Balaam tries to curse Israel. Israel will not be cursed by God, will not be cursed by Balaam, and his blessing. So, you have to read further on Balaam. This will come up later in the book of Numbers. Balaam will consult with the king of Moab and say, the way you win this is have your people marry his people, and his people marry your people. Pretty soon, there'll be a right mess, because your idols will basically defile them. They'll be out of God's blessing, and vice versa. But basically, they'll become defiled, and they'll not be a threat to you. In the best situation, the intermarrying will make peace, and in the the worst will be on them because they'll have defied their God. So there's two errors of Balaam. One is he was a hireling prophet. That is, he was willing to be paid a lot of money to try to curse Israel, which was wrong. And then two, the big error of Balaam was compromise. And then Israel bought the compromise. And that you can have that kind of relationship. You can marry believers and unbelievers, and you can mix in that sense. And God told them not to do that. So we have to be careful in our doings, that not to be unequally yoked, as we see in the book of Corinthians, with unbelievers. Yes, we have to live in the world. We have to have lost friends, and that's certainly it. But once we go in areas that compromises, whether business would probably be a good example, marriage is probably the biggest example, but maybe not what's primarily in view there, but that is the error of Balaam, that you have this compromise with the world, and basically the world wins, you lose on that one. So Balaam. But what's interesting is in Balaam, in one of his prophecies, he looks ahead and he sees a star in Judah. And I'm trying to, where is that? Basically, this is where we think perhaps the wise men might have been looking for a star to follow to, here we go, Balaam, the prophecy for the Messianic kingdom, Numbers 24, verse 15. Numbers 24:15 says, and he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor hath said, the man whose eyes are open hath said, he has said, which heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. This scepter, this star and the scepter seems to point to Christ, his advent, and his rule. Take that as far as you want, but I'll just lay that there for you, just as you're, again, this is a survey course, not to delve into that, but important stuff we go by there. Maybe make a little note there on that. So what happens in the final, the doctrine of Balaam, we'll see in chapter 25 is where all of that goes down. I was surprised because the last person does not die until this. So basically they're marrying, they're committing whoredoms, and they're blatant about it. In fact, they see one of the princes in verse 6 of chapter 25, behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses, and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. When Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose up from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand, and he went after the man of Israel into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. So the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. And those that died in the plague were 20 and 4,000. That is the last of the old generation right there. Gone. And good old Phinehas will be spoken of in the future about that. As we move to chapter 26, they're going to be, it will be time to add the congregation again. So again, at the beginning of the 40 years, there are about 600,000 men. At the end of 40 years, there are about 600,000 men. If you look through the, notice Numbers 26:64. We'll get down to the bottom of the tally sheet. But among these, there was not a man of whom Moses and Aaron, the priests, numbered when they numbered the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. So they have all died. The number is, oh, come on, where is it? It's up a few. Or is it down a few? Anyways, it's up in there. I'm not going to dig it out. So in Numbers 27:12 through 14, Moses is told of his impending death, and then Joshua is appointed in his place. We talked about that a little bit, but 27:12 through 14. The Lord said unto Moses, get thee up into this Mount Abarim, and see the land which I have given unto the children of Israel. When thou hast seen it, thou also shalt be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother was gathered. For you rebelled against my commandment in the desert of Zin, in the strife of the congregation, to sanctify me at the water before their eyes. That is the water of Meribah and Kadesh, the wilderness of Zin. It is Zin, not sin, for what it's worth. Joshua will be appointed. And we'll see that the last part of chapter 27 is where Moses will appeal to God for a leader, and Joshua will be selected. So the new instructing chapter of 28 through 36 here in the book of Numbers, what they're doing at this point is going to be, it's like, okay, why are we getting the law again? So as you're reading this, it's like, unleavened bread, all these things things are about to change when they go into the land. They're no longer going to be wandering around. There's going to be new rules that have to be observed. When they're wandering for 40 years, they needed one set of rules. And they were all together, but they're going to move into the land and they're going to spread out. They're no longer going to be this clump of people moving around. They're going to spread out over the entire land. So you're going to need some new rules. One will be, well, when you kill an animal, don't play little priest and offer that blood. If you really have to do it in such and such a way, but you really should bring that animal to the temple if you're going to if it's a sacrifice, bring it to the temple, and that is the only proper place for that. There's going to be some of those rules that as they go into the land, they're going to need the new rules. So let's see what he has to say for us. Offerings given to the Lord, the vows of men and women, avenge the children of Israel against the Midianites. Well, there will be a war. Numbers 31:49. And they will war against the Israelites. They slew all the males. Verse 7, where is he at? 31:49. Let's get the synopsis. They said unto Moses, thy servants have taken some of the men of war which are under our charge, and there lacketh not one man of us. So, again, the king of Midian opposed them. There's going to be a fight with him, and not one Hebrew was lost. Amazing. Chapter 32 through 36, at the request of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, they, half tribe of Manasseh, that is, they saw the land on the east of Jordan. They said, this is really good farmland. And so they will request to be on that side of the east side of the Jordan. Now they're going to say this is inside Canaan and not just outside, it was inside. Results will be found in 1 Chronicles 5:18 through 26. There's going to be a map that's drawn there verbally. But what was interesting and kind of sad, they chose what they could see rather than what was going to come from the Lord. 32:1, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad had a very great multitude of cattle. And when they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, and behold, the place was a place for cattle, they're going to ask to stay over there. And really the provision will be, it's okay if you stay over here, but you need to come and help us take the land. Just because you're going to settle on this side doesn't mean you don't have to be part of the conquest team. You will send people to fight. So they chose from what they could see rather than accepting the instructions of the Lord. All these wonderful lessons that are woven in here. Cities of refuge will be denoted now. Again, since we're moving into the land, there's going to be real cities. We're going to be having a land to occupy. The cities of refuge will be basically for, what do we call it? Not homicide,
Manslaughter.
It's manslaughter. You didn't mean to kill somebody, but if you don't go someplace safe till it can be resolved, the family will kill you and be probably within their rights to kill you. So that they would set up cities of refuge both on the east side and the west side of Jordan. So both sides would have cities of refuge. We'll get their number, their purpose, 35:9 through 12. They're all listed in chapter 35. 35:6 through 8 gives us the number. There'll be 6. Well, and also these will be the big Levitical cities. Not that the Levites didn't live elsewhere, but they'll be focused in these 6 large cities. And again, it's the place you have for the manslayer there, that he may flee. And to them you shall add 42 cities. Well, Those were for the Levites to live in. They would not be given an inheritance in the land per se, but they would be given a city to live in and a little strip of land around that city that they could grow things. But they would not be given a big piece of land as the other tribes would be given. We had the purpose there, 9 through 12. Again, that somebody could run there and they could petition to have their case heard. 13 through 14. I'm curious why he took all this time here with these. But he lists the cities where they are. You can plot them out on a map. And then regulations amongst the cities. And he tells them, hey, if someone runs in, you have to deal with it. And here's the conditions at which you deal with it. Again, we're making up, not making up, we are setting provisions in place for when they move into the land. And as the book closes, we'll see dealing with the security of their inheritance, which teaches of our eternal security in Christ. Well, he's making that analogy. You have to be careful with your typology. There's certainly security in Christ as an eternal inheritance. But what is going to happen is people will say, well, we don't have, there's no males, and the land will be passed on male to male in the heirs. And there's a couple of women there that did not have, there weren't any males in the family. They wanted to make sure they had an inheritance when it was all divided up, and they were given permission that at that time they would be given the land themselves in lieu of a male heir. I'm going to drop this in now. We studied this a couple of years ago. You know, patriarchy is always seen as a negative thing. It's almost a curse word in today's culture. Patriarchal religion. You can't deny this is a patriarchal religion. But if you look at what the patriarchy did, in particular, if you had two sons, the first son would be the one that basically the family line would go through. And that son would be the responsible one. But he would also be given a double portion of an inheritance over the number two son, and as many as there were ex-sons. When things were divided up, that lead son would get a double portion. The role of that lead son was basically, that was your social security program, their national insurance plan. That he was there when dear old dad passed on to watch over the family. And I think you probably see this best lived out in Abraham's life. What happened when the family gets taken away by marauding kings on Abraham's watch back in Genesis? He gets an army up and he goes and he saves the family. He puts his life on the line to get them back. That's his role. Yep. And so people, patriarchy, blah, blah, blah. It was the right thing at the right time. It was a very benevolent thing when done right. You know, any institution gets messed up when it's done wrong and for selfishness. But when it was handled right, it was a very good thing, and it was an effective thing.
It still happens today with titled people here, doesn't it? Where the first son will take on the title and have the estate to take care of. He has primacy.
Yeah, in theory, they're supposed to do all those things in a benevolent way, and you hope they do. And of course, it doesn't always work out that way. But that was God's intent and God's plan, and I think it's a good plan myself.
It wasn't optional. It was the eldest son's responsibility.
That's where it gets a little weird when you see an elder son not taking that role, or the second is the first, where we have Jacob and Esau, right? Jacob's going to buy his birthright from Esau. He was the second born, but he'll be the one that gets the birthright.
Esau was hangry.
He was hangry. Hangry for some chili.
Yes.
A bowl of chili. You also see it in David's family. Who will take over from David? Solomon. Solomon was boy number 7. Unusual. So there are these exceptions. So that's the book of Numbers. So as you read it, yes, you see Numbers, you'll see the rules and regulations, but at least when you see them the second time, go, okay, look for those things that are different because they're going into the land. And that's why they were done. So how much do you remember? Who is the main character in Numbers?
Moses.
It's got to be Moses, I think so. Who holds the office of high priest? Aaron. And when he passes on his sons. How many generations are found in the book?
2.
I would say 2. Yeah. And that is, we have the generation that came out of Egypt and the generation that's going to go into the land. It is 40 years, which is technically, what, 2 generations? But I wouldn't look at it that way. It's just there's really 2 groups in the nation. Why did they wander in the wilderness for 40 years?
1 year for every day of the scouts in the promised land.
Yep, and because they refused to follow God, God's direction was to go and take the land. And they said, nope, we're not going to do this. They rebelled. In fact, they almost stoned Moses and Joshua and Caleb. Pretty bad. And so what's the central truth of Numbers? Let's see what he says. What's his answer to that?
God is faithful and he doesn't take prisoners.
I would say it's better to be mute than the murmur.
It's a rebellion again. Isn't
No
it?
messing.
Obedience?
Yeah, not rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens when you do rebel?
Yeah.
Usually he tells us what the central truth is. Yeah, he's not saying, but that's when we look to the New Testament, what were those things? Don't do like those guys did. They were at that bad example. Don't rebel. Don't fight God. And then can you name the 3 main sections in our outline of Numbers?
Is it the old generation, the wandering, and then the new generation? No? Is it the old instruction and then?
I think that's good. Yeah, that's it. That's how he breaks it
Next
out.
instruction.
Because he had 6, 7, and 8. It's not sequential, but 6 was the old generation, 7 the wilderness wandering, and 8 the new generation. That's one way to look at it. Really, the first part of the book to me is more they're preparing to march, and they're doing all the things necessary. They're getting instruction, the final instructions before they go. These guys march here. When we camp, we go camp here. We blow the horn like this, run this way or run that way. But it is the old generation and the wandering and then the new. That's fine. And so your assignment: read the book of Deuteronomy. Mark your Bible, take notes, be present next Lord's Day. And these things are good. Well, at least we finished that. I hope we get to Deuteronomy tonight, but I think we're at our breaking point here. Questions? Good stuff. Hopefully you're getting something out of this.
Yeah.